We're joined by Seth Berenzweig, a technology law and data privacy expert. Welcome back to the show.
Pleasure to be back.
So as we know, technology is as good as the information that it's given to work with. So start first by summarizing the racial and gender bias in artificial intelligence machine learning, especially when it comes to facial recognition technology.
So there have been studies that have taken place over the last year or so that have demonstrated, and some of that was very eloquently stated in your lead-in, demonstrating that although this is a technology that's very powerful and has certain attributes to it, it's far from perfect, and there are a number of problems that are inherent within the technology. The technology is based upon the data input, and a lot of that may very well have an entry of focal points and data points that may be somewhat biased. Tellingly, there was, for example, a study recently from MIT in Massachusetts that demonstrated that a facial recognition technology was far more imperfect as it related to people of color and females. So you have a disparate conclusion and an inaccuracy inherent within this kind of technology. And this really, when you take a look at it in the current place of where we are in America, America is really at an inflection point as it relates to facial recognition technology. There are over 600 law enforcement agencies, state and federal, in the United States that are using this technology, and facial recognition of images that are derived from the public, from public protests, from driver's license pictures, from social media. There's no constitutional right of privacy with regard to one's facial features as it is out in public. So you really have kind of a collision at this moment where you have a very imperfect technology that's being used for very powerful policing purposes.
So then, being that it is already widely used and the bias is already in that algorithm, what can be done to correct this, and what are the implications of not addressing this properly from this point?
Well, when it comes to addressing it, Silicon Valley companies have really kind of taken the lead here. Microsoft, Amazon, IBM have all stepped forward, and they have declared a moratorium with respect to selling this kind of technology to law enforcement agencies. And they have called out the United States Congress to step into that fray and provide for some kind of federal national leadership with regard to that issue. There's currently a bill in the Senate known as the Facial Recognition Technology Moratorium Act, which seems to be a lead candidate. But really, it's very unclear where it's going to go. There's always a question in Washington, does the Congress have the political will to really lean forward and lead on these kinds of issues? If they do, this is going to be a very important moment, especially when there are new issues raised with respect to policing with all the demonstrations that are currently taking place in America.
So then we know that some of these efforts that tech companies are making are short-term, at least for now, and some of them do plan on reinstating this technology again. So is there any really point long-term by taking this action now in the short term?
Well, there are long-term implications because businesses are taking the lead. What usually happens, at least in the United States, is that the pace of technology outruns the pace of legislation. The technology usually runs out ahead of the legal changes that really match up to that. And particularly in Washington, where we have some problems getting some things through Congress, sometimes it's corporate America that takes the lead. And in California, not only have companies taken the lead here, but there are some municipalities in California, such as San Francisco and Oakland, that have started to enact some local regulation. But nothing really is going to change in any kind of a broad, long-term, sustained way until Congress actually makes some kind of a change. And it's going to be a very difficult balance for Congress because there may be certain legitimate applications for facial recognition as it relates to, for example, possible anti-terrorism operations. But until Congress really takes hold of the issue, it's going to continue to be very up in the air, and it's going to be a controversial matter, especially as it relates to local law enforcement.
So then how does what's happening in the U.S. compare to efforts being made in other countries that perhaps don't have a stringent issue with privacy as the U.S. does?
Well, you know, there are a lot of different kinds of regulations in Europe and in China. Really, China has been one of the global leaders as it relates to facial recognition technology. They they have a very broader, stronger infrastructure as it relates to collection of data for facial recognition technology, and they are really very far ahead of the United States, and that's something that's operated more on a national level. The facial recognition technology operations in America are generally more localized, although the FBI and DHS does use that sort of thing. But at this point, it's really in the basket of Washington to make a determination of how it really wants to do this. We're really at an inflection point right now, because when you have such powerful technology and otherwise no real privacy protections as it relates to people that are in public places,
right,
without Congress stepping in, it's really a problem without a solution.
We'll certainly be keeping an eye on that, and I suppose them on us. Thank you so much. Seth Berenzweig there, technology, law, and data privacy expert.